This is the news in brief from the United Nations. UN-appointed rights investigators announced on Thursday that they've launched a probe into an alleged massacre of at least 200 people in Ethiopia's Oromia region. Kari Betty Murungi, chair of the International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia, was speaking on the sidelines of the Human Rights Council in Geneva. The Commission had received reports last week of the killings in Western Oromia as it continued its work investigating rights abuses linked to conflict in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region that flared in November 2020. Despite many other conflicts around the world, Ms Murungi said that the world must not ignore what was happening in Ethiopia.
The ongoing spread of violence, fueled by hate speech and incitement to ethnic-based and gender-based violence, are early warning indicators of further atrocity crimes against innocent civilians, especially women and children who are more vulnerable.
Across Ukraine, the scale of needs caused by Russia's invasion is still massive and human rights concerns persist, UN humanitarians said in an update on the conflict on Thursday. They also repeated calls for access to the country's Black Sea ports to export vitally needed cereals. Speaking from Kiev, UN humanitarian coordinator for Ukraine, Osnat Librani, said that some 16 million people in Ukraine had multiple needs: water, food, health services, shelter and protection. Since the 24th of February, when the war began, the UN and humanitarian partners have delivered life-saving assistance to nearly 9 million people in every single region of Ukraine. But Ms Librani said that despite these successes, aid access is still too dangerous in many places.
We could not deliver relief items, relief supplies or be able to access Kherson. We could not deliver relief supplies or have access to Mariupol. We could not support any sort of assistance and have not even managed to have the parties to agree on safe passages to evacuate people from Severodonetsk so that they could move in the direction of their choice.
The spread of monkeypox to African countries where it has never been detected before is a worrying sign, but measures are being put in place to bolster national efforts to diagnose and treat the disease, the UN World Health Organization (WHO) said on Thursday. Dr. Matshidiso Moeti, WHO Regional Director for Africa, said that surveillance and laboratory diagnosis in affected countries were cornerstones of disease control, before urging greater support to expand genomic sequencing technology that was introduced during the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, although all African countries can test for monkeypox using polymerase chain reaction machines, many lack the reagents needed to do so on a bigger scale. To help, WHO wants to secure 60,000 tests for Africa, with around 2,000 tests and reagents to be shipped to high-risk countries and 1,000 to those at lower risk. According to latest monkeypox sequencing data, there is no recent linkage between the virus that's circulating in Europe and Africa, WHO said. Outside the 6 countries in Africa with a history of human transmission, the virus has also been reported in 3 countries which have never had any human cases. These are Ghana, Morocco and South Africa, which has confirmed the disease in 2 patients with no travel history, suggesting that there is a high possibility of local transmission. In Geneva, despite unprecedented consensus between Libya's opposing sides, they've been unable to reach a deal on presidential elections, it's been announced. In a statement on Thursday, veteran UN negotiator Stephanie Williams said that the presidents of Libya's House of Representatives and its High Council of State had overcome numerous sticking points, such as the division of responsibilities between the president, prime minister, cabinet and local government. But disagreements persist on eligibility requirements for the candidates of the country's first presidential elections, Ms Williams said. And she noted that although progress secured during 3 rounds of consultations in Cairo and in Geneva this week was significant, it remains insufficient to move forward towards comprehensive national elections, which is a genuine desire of the Libyan people. Daniel Johnson, UN News. This is the news in brief from the United Nations. The situation for women is so desperate in Afghanistan that they're committing suicide at a rate of 1 or 2 every day, the Human Rights Council has heard. It comes as the top UN Rights Forum in Geneva agreed to member states' request for a rare urgent debate on the issue this Friday. Addressing the Council, here's Fawzia Kufi, former Deputy Speaker of the Afghan Parliament.
Every day there is at least 1 or 2 women who commit suicide for the lack of opportunity, for the mental health, the pressure they receive. The fact that girls as young as 9 years old are being sold not only because of economic pressure, but because of the fact that there is no hope for them, for their family. It is not normal.
Echoing widespread international concern for ordinary Afghans, UN Human Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet condemned the massive unemployment of women, the restrictions placed on the way they dress, and their lack of access to basic services. Women-owned and operated businesses have been shut down, Ms Bachelet added, saying that 1.2 million girls no longer have access to secondary education, in line with a decision by the de facto authorities who took power in August 2021. UN aid coordinator Najat Roshdi has signalled grave concerns about rising humanitarian needs affecting everyone, everywhere across Lebanon, linked to the global food and fuel crisis. Since last year, the number of people in urgent need of support has risen by 46%, the UN Deputy Special Coordinator for Lebanon said.
2.2 million vulnerable Lebanese, 86,000 migrants and 200,000 Palestinian refugees in Lebanon currently require emergency aid, in addition to the 1.5 million Syrian refugees. They are unable to afford or even access health, food, electricity, water, education, and wastewater management, not to mention life-saving protection services.
Since 2019, Lebanon has endured a complex economic and financial crisis deepened by political deadlock, which has offset development gains and increased humanitarian needs for the most vulnerable populations in severely deprived areas. Even hospitals have been affected, faced with an acute shortage in medical supplies and power shortages at a time when over 40% of Lebanon's doctors and 30% of nurses have left the country since the beginning of the economic meltdown, Ms Roshdi said. A week since the US Supreme Court overturned a landmark 50-year-old judgment guaranteeing access to abortion, top UN-appointed independent experts urged United States lawmakers to adhere to international law that protects women's right to sexual and reproductive health. The UN Women's Rights Committee, CEDAW, said in a statement that the US had signed the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women in 1980, but never ratified it. With nearly 190 states parties, the Convention is the only near-universal treaty that comprehensively protects women's human rights, including the right to end pregnancies. The US is one of 7 states worldwide that have not yet become party to the Convention. Specifically, Article 16 protects women's rights to decide freely and responsibly on the number and spacing of their children, the UN-appointed panel said, adding that unsafe abortion is a leading cause of maternal mortality. Daniel Johnson, UN News.